All right, so I'm Jeff,
I'm Sloan.
And I'm Brandon.
and this is our Google lesson plan. We were assigned for the beginners Google Maps and for the advanced Google SketchUp, and we actually came up with a lesson that we thought could incorporate both of them. So as you can see here, we designed a 90-minute lesson titled Richmond, Past, Present, and Future. It is intended for a World G course, but we could easily see it being used for U.S. history. The rationale basically is that with the changing world, um, human society and physical environments contribute to how cities grow, change, and morph over time. So this is really kind of a case study look at Richmond in the past, in the present, and in the future. We broke it up into three parts. We've got here are our objectives real quickly. Students will be able to identify the defining physical and human features of the city. That covers several of the activities that we're looking at. Students will be able to analyze photos, letters, and personal accounts of the Civil War. And students will be able to locate historical buildings and man-made structures on a Google map. Those are basically what we're after. Like I said, we've divided it into three parts. We've got our Just Do It, which kind of is a transition between units on physical geography and human geography. The first activity is we give students a map, which we'll look at in a little bit, and students are to find kind of the major physical and man-made structures on this map of Richmond in the Civil War. From the past, we'll move into the present, where they take the list that they created in part one, in the first activity, and map those onto a current map of Richmond, and then kind of also point out some of the important features and man-made structures today in Richmond. And that's where we use Google Maps for that particular activity. And then for the third activity is where we kind of transition into Google SketchUp, where students take a couple buildings from the activity 1 and activity 2 and create a new cityscape of Richmond, how they imagine it'll look in the future, kind of considering what they've learned throughout the lesson. And then we ask them to do a Diamond 9 at the end, just kind of as a quick closure. So now, as you can see through this, there's the Diamond 9. And I think now it's time to turn it over to Brandon to look at the Richmond map.
And so the idea behind Richmond was that post-Civil War there was a massive fire as the Union soldiers came in that wasn't put out until after the Confederacy had surrendered. And so a lot of buildings might have been destroyed. And so going from the past into the present, it would be interesting to see what buildings had survived or not survived that fire. And so this map is from 1862, right at the beginning of the war, and it's got a lot of the Confederate States' major buildings, such as the War Department, as the Treasury. But also, so with those, and students would be required to make a list of the buildings that they deemed important. So the state capitol would be in there. I mean, not only buildings, but also structures. For example, the Richmond and Peterstown Railroad Bridge would be put on there, perhaps, and anything that they want. And there are other maps that they could also consider, but this was a great map for just concise, and it has numerous buildings that could potentially be standing or not standing once we look at the present-day Google map. And so now I think it's Sloan's turn to tell you a little bit about the actual Google map.
Okay, so activity 2, the students were supposed to take the list of the historic buildings that they found in activity 1 and then map them on Google's map. And then we were also going to give them a list of modern day buildings such as museums and other things like that, and they were also going to include that on their maps. So this is an example of what their map could look like. And it's very simple to make a Google map. You have to have a Google account, but once you log in, you go to My Maps, create a new map. This is the one that we created. And then every time you want to add something, you click on this, and then you bring it to where it was. So say I wanted to include the Robert E. Lee statue. So then I click on that, and then I title it.
You can spell.
All right. And then you can also change what it looks like. We're going to make it look like a statue. And there you go. It's as simple as that. And you can also include a description or an explanation of what the building is. And so that is what the Google map would look like. And now, Jeff for SketchUp.
All right, so they would take that that information and take 2 from the historical list and 2 from the modern list and kind of go into Google SketchUp. And what we did here was imported the basic 2D rendering of downtown Richmond. And actually there's some nice features in Google SketchUp where you can go and import buildings from the warehouse. So what I went in doing was I just went in and typed, if I can spell, Richmond. And I was able to import several of these buildings directly into the model. And so that made it really nice and easy for me. As you can see, the Capitol building's right here. This is the Bank of America building over here. This is the current state capitol, the old state capitol, and several other buildings, a mausoleum right here. But then what I did was trying to imagine what it might look like in the future. I ended up I went through the same process of looking for models. I mean, this time I just kind of randomly looked for skyscrapers. And so these 2 buildings right here are actually skyscrapers that exist in the world today. But I was just trying to populate the world a little bit, giving students an idea of what they could do. Another one is this church here, replacing an old church, which I had imagined needed to be rebuilt because it had been around for several centuries, as well as the Executive Mansion for the same reason. So it's really kind of a pulling in buildings option, but students certainly are able to, using SketchUp, build their own buildings. We just hadn't fully explored that option yet. So that, I think, is our lesson in a nutshell.